Chris Watkin back again with Jonathan Handford, who is Fine and Country's Supremo in the Midlands, and he's going to give us 5 top tips on how to get fees of 2% or above. Talk to me, Jonathan.
Fees are, I think, a mindset. I think you have to believe that you are worth more money.
That's what Matt Giggs said on that sofa a few weeks ago.
Yeah, talk sense. But then I think the belief isn't enough, because then I think you have to follow it up with behaving like you are worth more money. You know, and a good example of that is what you bring to the table, for instance, on a viewing appointment. And if on a viewing appointment you're there to open doors and just to meet somebody with a set of keys, you're not really adding a lot of value. If you've got a museum curator level of knowledge where you can actually talk people through the fabric of the building, and you can talk them through easements, covenants, rights of ways, the age of the building, when extensions were done, what warranties were in place, if there's a chance of repair, you know, that's the sort of thing where you can add value and people will look and go, wow, I'm comparing this to the 10 other agents that I've done viewings with, and you stand out a country mile.
Do you think people go and view houses before they put theirs on the market, and therefore will use that as an opportunity to judge estate agents?
Absolutely. And again, probably 50% of people are swapping agents anyway, and not their second time sellers. They're selling with the second agent. So even if they're not putting it on, and even if they're choosing their agent 4 or 5 years further on down the line, they'll remember how you made them feel and how you looked after them.
Have you got business on the back of people remembering you from a couple of years ago?
So if you ring the Leamington office, you won't get John Handford for evaluation, and you haven't done for years. So the only people that get me are on my mobile, or it's a personal recommendation, or I've dealt with them in the past. So I'm desperately trying to wind things down to concentrate on other stuff, but people will automatically gravitate and come back to me. And I think it's because of how I would have looked after them first time round.
So your first tip is deliver a museum curator level of information. What's your second one?
So as I said, believe and behave, I would say, are the second and the third tip. So the museum curator level of knowledge, I'd say there are 3 things there as such. The fourth one would be to focus on self-development, on education and sharpening the saw. You know, there are people that are probably still working the way that they worked 10, 15 years ago, having made no adaptation. They've not adopted any new techniques or strategies, and they're perfectly equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. So there are knowers and there are learners in the world, and I would definitely categorise myself as a learner. I'm constantly listening to podcasts, audiobooks, watching your very insightful and helpful videos, because I want to learn, and if there is somebody doing something out there differently, I want to see if I can adapt that into my business.
Do you think estate agents are very good at self-help?
Some of them are exceptional, but I think it's the Pareto principle, it's the 80-20 rule. So there'll be 20%, 1 in 5, that will be very focused on self-development, and then the other 4 out of 5 probably won't be. But then the irony is, I would say there's 20% of the people earn the majority of the commission and do the majority of the sales. And my experience is they tend to be the learners, the people that are rolling their sleeves up and investing in self-development.
What's the 5th and final one?
Be prepared to walk away from an instruction.
But that's rejection. We've spoke about that before.
We have spoke about rejection, but if you're in control of the decision-making process, I think there's something quite liberating from saying, these aren't on my terms. And my logic is this: I would rather have 5 instructions at 2.5% than 10 at 1.25%, because I think the 5 at 2.5%, you can do a better job, you can be more available, more focused, you can contact people in the evenings and weekends, and you don't feel bitter about spending time out of hours dealing with it, and you can just do a better job of putting an arm around the seller and guiding them to the finishing line. So I think you've got to be prepared to walk away from an instruction, and if you do, it is quite a liberating experience. And also, when you end up cutting a corner and taking an instruction at a lower price, it can be a future headache. Without going into too much detail, you can, not all business is good business, and you can end up inheriting a bit of a headache that becomes a problem later on. You know, people have got to see value in what you do. So I think be prepared to walk away.
Thank you for your time today, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me.